Well, my name's Terry Jones, and I'm the CEO and the founder of Fluid Info, which is a little company based in London, and I work out of Barcelona. We have just a couple of developers, and we're working on information storage and representation and sharing and creation and search, ownership, control, anything to do with information. We're sort of on top of it in some sense. And we're trying to build a storage platform for the whole world, a little bit like Freebase. Another example is something like S3, which is a storage layer, but at a very low level, where you just sort of say, here's a blob, and then you say, where's my blob? We're doing that, and we're also trying to build something that looks like a search engine that digs around inside of the information architecture and finds objects and lets you, name them and organize them and so on. A bit like the Finder in Mac OS or the Windows Explorer, where you can look at the underlying objects, which are files, and put names on them, put them in folders, and so on and so forth. So we're building those two things at the same time. Well, there's some things that make the system unique or different or noteworthy, or the kind of things that get you invited to a O'Reilly food camp, maybe. And probably the most important one is that we live today in a world that's a bit old-fashioned, sort of in information sense, because we operate with files and with web pages, and we have these objects that have a single owner, and they have a single structure and a format and so on, and they're very rigid. They've got one name, and you can't change them, and you can't annotate them. They're not writable. Most people can only read them. And in our architecture, the objects are not owned. The real world is very flexible with information, and I think we need an information architecture which has a similar flexibility, and it'll make solving a lot of problems much simpler. So, for example, there's a lot of issues today with, if you are on the web and you put a rating on a website, or you add something to Twitter, or you put a comment on a blog or something or other, where does that information go? And shouldn't you continue to own it? And why can't you delete it? Why can't you do a search on it? Why can't you combine it with other information easily? Why can't it be shared? Why can't you organize it the way you would like to organize it? And I think the answer to all of those questions is that we're working with a very old-fashioned information architecture, which sort of comes from file systems and hierarchies and thinking that was necessary because of the computational environment in the 60s or the 50s or something, where we had very few resources, and we were forced to build these very efficient things like these trees, and put the metadata over here and the content over here, and everything must have one name and be in one location. And the real world just doesn't work that way. All of that stuff, all the information in the real world is very unstructured in that sense. There's no schemas, there's no organization, there's no permissions, and so on. And I'm trying to make a computational environment for information that much more closely mirrors that kind of flexibility. That's why the company is called Fluid Info. If you provide an information architecture that allows people or programs to create that information in very easy ways and to form queries, then they can do things of sort of arbitrary richness and arbitrary levels of personalization. The architecture is really about saying anyone can add anything to any object, and then you can search on it. But normal people want to know that stuff. And if you give them an information architecture where they can put information onto objects arbitrarily, and they're not restricted, and you give them tools to do the search and to organize that stuff, then you're taking control away from the people who own the information, and you're putting it into the hands of normal people, and you're giving them a place where they can put anything that they want. And I think there's an incredible value locked up in normal people. We're all experts at really weird things. We're all very highly idiosyncratic, and we have tons and tons and tons of personal, valuable experience and knowledge, and we don't have anywhere to put it. We don't have any way to combine it. And that's what I'm trying to build. I'm trying to build an architecture where you can do all that stuff. I'm trying to build an information system for normal humans that we can all interact with in a way that's very fluid.